What in the world is going on with lumber prices? This is insane. This is insane. I'm actually going to pay $10 for a 2x4 or $61 for one sheet of OSB? Oh my God. All right, this has been a really hot topic the past 6 months to 8 months, especially. I've had a lot of people asking me what my opinion is on what's going to happen with the price of lumber and other construction costs in general. So we're going to dig right into this. I'm going to explain, starting with the history of how we got here, simple supply and demand economic statistics, and kind of move into what I think might happen and how this is going to affect not only construction but also real estate markets in the near future. Before we get started, you guys, if you wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications for future videos. Got tons of content on here for real estate and home building in the entrepreneurial world. Make sure you guys check out the podcast on all audio platforms and right here on the YouTube channel. Okay, so let's get started with first understanding what happened to lumber prices over the last 18 months, especially. What in the world is going on to cause prices to go up so dramatically that people literally that have never touched a 2x4 in their lives are asking me, why is it so expensive right now? So let's dive right in and talk about a little bit of the history behind this. And I'm going to show you guys how we got here and where we're going. Okay, first things first, was lumber this high last year? Was lumber this high 2 years ago? No, we've actually seen a dramatic increase in the price of lumber over the last 18 months especially. So taking you back, like I said, to a little bit of the history here. Early in 2020, we just started diving into this pandemic, and the C word clapped us. I'm not going to even talk about that C word anymore. I'm tired of it. I know everybody is. Okay? So basically back in early March and continuing on through basically I would say all last summer, prices in lumber were actually going way, way down, okay, to a really, really low mark, actually. The lowest I've seen lumber, honestly, in the past 5 or 6 years, if I believe that statistic is right. All right, so what happened? How did we get to that point? How did it get to that low mark? So think about what was going on with the economy beforehand and all the building that was actually happening, and there was huge demand for especially even new construction. Even the remodel world was seeing a giant bump. There was equity in homes. People had money to spend, and they were willing to do so. So you're seeing this higher demand and drive for new construction, which was causing lumber, especially, the mills, everybody that's creating the lumber itself was trying to pump out as much lumber as possible, and they were going gangbusters to keep up with this demand as it was circulating through the economy. Then, bring in the C word. Boom, everything shuts down literally within days. The mills all of a sudden have all this lumber that they were anticipating pushing out to distributors, lumber yards, and ultimately to the builders themselves. And all of a sudden, nobody can get anywhere with it. No one's working. Literally everyone's at home, shut down, okay? Construction operations literally ceased. Lumber mills, everybody else is left with all this lumber just sitting there in their supply yard. Well, in simple supply and demand, in order to get rid of the supply, you got to drop price, right? So what happened here is combine that with low interest rates for home mortgages and new construction financing, all of this leading to the boom in the building and remodel worlds. And all of a sudden, you've got way too much lumber, and you don't have anywhere to put it. You can't get it to anyone because we're literally shut down, right? All right, so there you go. There's the first part of that situation. Now, all of a sudden, things start opening up. People start getting back to work in the real estate and home building worlds. And there's the demand that had been building up ahead of time suddenly opens the floodgates for this lumber. And now you've flip-flopped the entire thing, and it went from we have all this lumber sitting in our yards, we can't get it out, to you have so many people calling and saying, I need lumber, I need lumber, I need lumber. All of a sudden you went from a supply problem to a serious demand problem. Okay, so I'm sure I've lost a few people already in this entire scenario. So we're going to break it down to simple supply and demand economics, okay? This is a supply and demand chart. Very, very simple one. So we have a price that's P that's on this axis right here. And then we have a quantity of whatever material, whatever product, commodity we're talking about right here, okay? This is our point of equilibrium, okay? This is where we were at before all this nonsense came in. And I mean nonsense in the way that it was just like it literally was not expected and just absolutely crushed everybody. Our demand and the supply lines, okay? So before the C word came into our existence, we were going crazy. Demand was increasing for building and remodeling, all right? Combine that again, like I said, with low mortgage rates, and it just wouldn't stop. There was just a giant push in the housing market overall. So you get to a point where the mills continue to push supply up because they want to make sure they're keeping up with their ultimate customer, which is the builder or home builder or remodeler, whoever it is. They want to keep getting supply out there, right? As demand increases on this axis. So we're staying at a point of equilibrium on price because the right amount of supply, in theory, was running with the right amount of demand. But suddenly, even though demand had kept going up, we had that C word force come into as an unexpected slap in the face. Mills are continuing to go, but everything else gets shut down. So now you have all this supply sitting here, but there's literally no demand at all for a temporary period of time because no one's open. Builders can't go out. Everyone's shut down and at home. So you have the supply sitting here, and they have this weird kind of fluctuating demand that's kind of out on the horizon, but it's all the way down here because there's no buyers yet. They're not going to buy anything until they can get back to work. Okay? So then open up back June, July of last year, and it literally just took off like a rocket. Boom, all this demand, which sucked all the supply out of the market at a very unexpected rate to a point where they couldn't keep up. And you run supply all the way down as demand continued to go crazy because everybody's trying to catch back up. So all of a sudden, you have it all the way up here and supplies all the way down here. There's nothing left. And in this supply and demand scenario in economics, when you have less supply and an increasing extraordinary amount of demand going on, prices move upward. And the reason prices move upward is because you have to basically try and take some of the demand out of the market. Here's why. Here's how this works. If you have an extraordinary amount of demand and they keep buying it and the price keeps rising and it keeps rising and it keeps rising, there is a point of disequilibrium where people will literally say, I can't afford it now. It doesn't make sense in my market to continue to buy this product that I need, in this sense, building homes, to continue to go. Now my margins don't make sense. So demand gets pulled out of the market because cost becomes too high for the ultimate customer. So there's a point where the price will top out, and because the demand is not there, you're going to bring that price to a point where it's going to actually stop, okay? No one's buying at this price. You better not produce anymore. We have all this supply. So then, in order to get rid of the supply, you have to start dropping that price, okay? Drop that price to a point where people start grabbing it again at a demand point, all right? That can actually change your point of equilibrium. We're not going to get into that right this moment. Okay, so that's the theory behind the supply and demand. And what we're trying to do, or what the distributors of lumber are trying to do right now, literally is trying to draw demand out of the market by continuing to increase prices. And when I say continuing to increase prices, I'm talking about a scenario where we've gone, in just over a year even, we've gone to a $250 per 1,000 board feet to over $850 per 1,000 board feet, okay? So that's literally the scenario that's trying to be created here in order to slow down demand. What's really going on right now is the demand isn't slowing down. People are continuing to pay this price. Even though no one's bitching about it, they're still buying the supply at that price. So what are we going to do? What's going on? I keep getting asked this question, is when do I see lumber prices dropping? Well, until there's demand removed from the market, it's not going to. But the problem is there's going to be a point where not even just price is going to dictate a slow demand in the pullback. It's going to be literally that we can't build. There's not enough supply of any material, and you just can't continue to start building homes if there's no materials to build them with. Combine that even further with the fact that it's a labor shortage. You can't even find people that want to work, let alone skilled workers, which has been a problem for many years. And then combine that with the C word coming into play, and then creating this other concept of people not wanting to come back for work, whether it's just because of fear of getting sick, or it's the fact that they're getting paid to stay home at this point, and that's a temporary thing as well. You can't get enough labor in this market. So you take the utter fact that you don't have any supply to start building homes, and you don't have anybody that wants to work, the demand to actually build the home is going to be created by the person that's not in the ultimate seat of demand. It's the person that literally is in the middle, the builder, okay? That's the person that's going to end up kind of pushing the brakes on this whole thing in the foreseeable future, because they have no ability. We have no ability to continue building. Okay, so with that simple breakdown of supply and demand, and there's been argument that that's not really the only thing or even part of what's going on with lumber prices, I wanted to actually address something that the New England Building Supply had actually come out with an article fairly recently and talked about some other factors that were literally kind of building up into this type of scenario with the cost of home prices increasing. And I've talked about a lot of the different reasons why the cost of homes continue to increase, and obviously, you guys know that I'm trying to figure out ways to decrease those in many, many different facets of building and alternative construction by itself. That being said, they were addressing many, many other things that have gone into this, with other costs themselves rising, okay? So they're saying here, pandemic aside, there are rising costs of everything going to lumber production, labor, transportation, containers. We're talking about shipping containers. We all know about that stuff. All the costs going across the board, driving up the cost of lumber, and that was regardless of supply and demand, especially when we had the C word kind of jump into the bus with us. For instance, the cost of a flatbed truck to haul lumber, I found this fascinating, went up 24% between January 2017 and January 2018. So all of the outside factors that contribute even to this distribution of lumber itself was causing these lumber prices to go up well before we had what entered our lives a little bit over a year ago, okay? So they were saying, here's what's going on with lumber prices because of these things, and what are we looking forward to? Because I know, again, we've been looking at lots of different determinants here, and I've had lots of different people asking me, when's the price going to go down? Should I wait to build a home? Should I wait to do a basement? Blah, 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 blah. All right, first things first, I want to show you guys this real quick. So this is the random length futures contracts, May 2021, all right? So you can see in here, here's our chart, and for those that don't understand how to read charts, that's not a big deal. I'm going to break it down real simple for you. This is our lumbers. All right, this is our lumber futures. So we're going to go all the way into, we have a channel here between these two lines that's kind of moving in what we saw before as far as the price of lumber moving, okay? Here's our breakout point right here, right above 1,018, and that's of March 31st, 2021. This is really when stuff started kind of really picking up steam as far as building kind of catching up. I mean, I know we kind of opened the floodgates last June, July-ish for a lot of the industry. For me, really what was happening is there was still a slinky effect of builders getting labor back into the market. And so even though there was all the demand to build, we couldn't press go 100% until we had crews back in place, other people back in place, so forth, to kind of make this kind of giant push to catch up on all the demand that was out there. That was right about this time. And you can see where it broke out of this channel right about the end of March of this year. And from there, it just absolutely skyrocketed to the point where we're at, right now we're at over 1690 on these futures contracts for May, okay? I'm looking at possibly being over 2,000 here in a couple weeks, I think before June for sure. What does that mean? Well, it just means that this price continues to get paid for even though the price of lumber continues to move, along with other materials. So there isn't a slowdown as far as people being unwilling to continue to pay these dramatic prices. Okay, so going back to this article, they're talking about are these prices going to stay high? I know everyone's looking at this question. So, and even though they say that COVID-19 is here to stay, well, I mean, yes and no. I'm not going to get into the argument between what viruses do and so forth. Things have certainly become more unpredictable. In order for the prices to come down, here's the things that need to happen. And I do agree with some of this. In the U.S., lumber production will need to increase over the lost supply from Canada. And the Canadian import duties that were actually slapped down on Canada in the last few years by us, okay? Those need to come down so Canada can export more lumber to the United States. We need Canada's lumber. That's what people need to understand too. It's not all just getting milled here in the States. A lot of it comes from other countries, especially Canada. We know what Canada's doing right now. There's severe lockdowns still happening, many, many shutdowns across their country, which is severely squeezing the supply out production, right? The outcome from these lockdowns is really showing up now because they can't even get to mill the product to get to us. Shutdowns within the lumber industry will need to come to an end. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm not going to get into politics, but I'm not seeing any answers on the other side. I have people that live in other countries. I know friends and family, and especially in Canada, and they're not seeing any reprieve from any of these lockdowns. If anything, it's just getting tighter. So all the producers up there, I mean, how are they going to get back to work if they're not being allowed to, right? So that supply is not coming out anytime soon. They're saying once these things start to happen, lumber prices should fall, but when that happens depends on when life will return to quote-unquote normal, and no one knows. There's just so much uncertainty still left. The people in charge are not giving us any answers. People are kind of trickling back into the workforces in various ways. Things are slowly opening up in different industries, restaurants, so forth. People are talking about coming back to normal, but we're not seeing it in this industry, especially when we're relying on other countries to continue to give us products that we need to build the home, all right? So that's something you need to keep in mind. It's not even about supply and demand as it is the effect on what we have on these duties here through Canada, when Canada will actually open up. I'm not real confident in that. Do we go other places to get lumber? I don't know. We're going to have to start looking at other resources for sure. But this is a good point to bring up that people aren't talking about. It's not just the supply and demand based on how wonderful the market's doing. It's other factors as well. Okay, bottom line. When are lumber prices going to drop? Well, I honestly think with all the factors that I just addressed there, the biggest factor that's actually going to cause lumber to start dropping finally, and I don't know when that's going to be. I don't see it happening anytime this year because, like I showed you those futures contracts, I don't see there's any reason for the price to dictate what people are buying right now, meaning builders, remodelers, everybody else. They even though they're complaining about it, they're going to keep paying this price right now. So that's just going to continue to drive the price higher, continue to shrink the supply. Distributors, mills are not going to be able to keep up, and eventually that price is going to get to a point where the factor that's going to be involved in the slowdown of the demand is going to be me and builders overall. We're going to say, I can't afford it. My margins are too tight. I don't have enough labor to keep up with the demand. I have to start saying no to clients. I have to start saying no to the product itself, and I'm going to slow down because of these other things that are being dictated to me between price and labor, which will eventually slow down the rest of the market. And if I'm coming back to a client and saying it's going to end up costing you this, which is literally, I'm talking about adding $20,000 to $50,000 on lumber prices alone to the cost of a new build, there is a point where the client, the ultimate client, the one I'm building for, the one that the production builder is building for, they're not going to pay those prices. They're going to say, I'm not moving. I'm going to wait for the market to settle down. And between me saying, no, I'm not building anymore, and people in the market saying, no, I'm not paying that price for that home, that will end up dictating the overall supply of everything material-wise to build a house to come down, because we're going to stop buying it. So supply will start catching up. The price will then start coming back down because there's a point where there's nobody buying. The demand has drastically decreased because of those factors, and that's when lumber prices are going to start dropping. That's my opinion. I don't think that's going to happen anywhere in the near term. Like I said, the rest of this year, I don't see any of that slowing down. Next year, possibly, there's a point where there's basically what's called the law of diminishing returns. That's what's going to actually dictate, and we're going to be that factor, the builders and the people asking for the homes themselves. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video. We got the podcast pumping out as fast as we can. We got a lot of demand and low supply on that end as well. So we're trying to keep up. Those are on all audio streaming platforms and right here on the YouTube channel as well. Appreciate the support. If you guys got questions, drop them in the comments below. And until next time, guys, keep building.